Hello everyone, welcome to this NodeSIP webinar in partnership with Clarity AI, Insight at Speed, AI for Sustainable Investing. We're going to start first by defining the terms that we're going to be using in the webinar so that everyone is on the same page. It's going to be about AI terms and key definitions. Then we are going to talk about how AI can solve the complexity of sustainable investing. And that I'm really, really excited about because sustainable investing is becoming really complex indeed. After that, we're going to talk about the concerns that we have about AI and AI's limitations, as well as the potential solutions to these limitations. And last but not least, we're going to see how we can future-proof portfolio management with AI, and I should say sustainable portfolio management. But to start with, I think it would be a good idea to welcome our experts, and I'm going to start by introducing you to Robert Vixay, who is portfolio manager at SEB Asset Management. He is now, since August, managing the ECB European Defence and Security Fund, but he's also been instrumental in managing or co-managing the transition of the SEB Nordic Equity Fund to become Article 9 compliant. Robert has a long experience from other organizations such as Storebrand, where he was responsible for sustainable investing, and another local called East Capital. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
And we also have Austin Ritzel. He's Enterprise Solution Manager at Clarity AI, who is partnering with us for this webinar. And at Clarity AI, he is carrying forward his mission of marrying capital to purpose. And he's doing that by performing strategic work and custom solution deployment for enterprise clients, helping to design and implement novel, made-to-measure solutions for some of the world's largest financial institutions. Welcome, Austin.
Thank you, Aileen.
Well, Austin, we will start by going into the basics of AI, as I announced previously, and the screen is yours. Please help us understand the AI essentials and key definitions.
Perfect. Thank you, Aileen, and thanks to everyone for being here. Robert, in particular, it's a pleasure to have this discussion today. I think the best place to start is with some foundations, some table setting. We know that there are a lot of buzzwords in this field, and I think very often we take it as a granted that people know what we're talking about, and we throw them around freely without properly defining these terms. So let's start at the fundamental level with data science. Data science is, not to belabor the word, fundamental, right? It is scientific methods that extract meaning and knowledge from data. And interestingly, and this is in relation to the dice graphic that you see on your screen there, the left side, we can trace some key concepts associated with data science, specifically around statistical probability, to gambling in France in the 1700s. And it came with this realization that with one die, each outcome has a 1 out of 6 chance of occurring, right? Makes sense. But when you introduce another die, an interesting thing happens that is perhaps not totally intuitive. The probability of rolling a 7 is actually 6 times more likely than rolling a 2 or a 12. And we'll come back to the importance of statistical probability, particularly for LLMs later on in today's discussion. Big data, meanwhile, which is an outgrowth of data science, of course, comes with the internet, which introduced the ability to access and process much larger data sets. Data science itself leads then to machine learning, and here we start to get to some of the key concepts we hear so much about today. Machine learning is very basically algorithms and models that learn from examples. So it's not about explicitly programming what needs to happen, but rather it's more about here's some data, extract the relevant attributes to arrive at the desired outcome. So concretely, this is what we at Clarity AI use for our estimation and reliability algorithms, for example. An important subset of machine learning is deep learning, which was a very, very hot topic some years ago, continues to be very relevant today, of course. Deep learning is machine learning models that are based upon a replica of the networks of neurons that really make the human brain, the mammalian brain, tick. As such, the models that are based on deep learning are especially good at perception tasks, so speech, understanding images, and so on. So a critical outgrowth of deep learning is natural language processing, or NLP, which of course assists in information retrieval, analysis, question and answering, summarization, and more. It's a very powerful tool. We use it for a whole bevy of tasks at Clarity AI, perhaps most prominently for reading and assessing news articles for controversies. So then moving to all the way to the right-hand side of the screen, we think about AI itself as sort of the umbrella term for the automation of human-level cognitive tasks. So that is tasks of which previously we only thought humans capable. So things like driving a car, maintaining a cogent conversation, playing chess, so on and so forth. An important slice of AI is Gen AI, which has become very, very prevalent in many of our day-to-days with the use of ChatGPT, Gemini, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and more. And the key thing about Gen AI is that it has been trained to do more than just passively understand inputs, but also to generate text and images. So that's why you can have a conversation with ChatGPT or Gemini. Fundamental to Gen AI is LLMs, large language models. This is a specific type of AI model that's trained on massive text data sets and optimized specifically for language-based tasks like summarization, translation, conversational Q&A, which is in fact one of its primary uses at Clarity AI. And here we actually, because I liked one things, to loop back to the foundations of data science, specifically the statistics and the DAI example. Fundamentally, what large language models do is determine the statistical probability that one word follows another word. It sounds simple. It's in fact very, very complex in practical terms, but with just this very simple task, you can encode an enormous amount of knowledge. And in fact, you can try this at home. You can put this statistical probability test to the test. If you ask ChatGPT, for example, to finish this sentence, quote, "I think, therefore," it will always end with "I am," because that ending is statistically overwhelmingly probable. But if you ask it to finish a sentence like, "The dog wore stilettos to Venice because," it will give you a different answer every time, because there are many, 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 many potential answers to the conclusion of that sentence. So there are your foundations. There's certainly much, much more technical depth to all of this, but I know my circle of competence, so I'll leave it there for now.
All right, but before we move on, I just have a couple of clarification questions, so we all know we're on the same page. So the first question I have is, for example, when you do search, and a lot of people are optimizing search with AI now. For example, when you go to Google, you'll find a sort of AI-generated answer. How does this fit into these three categories? Is it generative AI or is it something else?
Yes, exactly. It's Google integrating their Gemini model, which is Gen AI based. It's a large language model into the search term to compete with the overwhelming number of people who are beginning to use ChatGPT for the sort of information that they previously would turn to Google for. So yeah, it would fit into the Gen AI bucket in this case.
All right, and when we talk about, we very much hear about people talking about where AI is going and the type of AI that we could have potentially in the future. We're talking about agentic or AI, or we're talking about artificial general intelligence, like AGI. Can you just quickly tell us what that is and how far we are from these kind of concepts?
So agentic AI is being very much deployed today, and that's the way that we think about uh, the usage of specifically Gen AI and large language models at Clarity AI is building agents that are optimized around a specific task and can operate that task or execute that task with reduced, I won't say minimal, because we're very concerned about the need for a human in the loop, but reduced human intervention. So I think agentic AI is with us and is a very powerful tool. Some in the room may have in fact already created their own agents through ChatGPT or through, I believe it's Microsoft has an agent studio as well. The AGI conversation is much more complicated and in some ways philosophical. I think there is very, very vibrant debate among academics about just basically the feasibility of AGI, whether it's something that can be achieved, and then you have a whole different philosophical argument about should it be achieved. But AGI, just so that everyone's on the same page, can be defined very simply as the ability for AI systems to understand, learn, and apply knowledge across a wide variety of different domains at least human levels of cognition, if not what we would term superhuman levels of cognition. So it's really the ability to take concepts that it's learned from, say, the physics domain and apply it to a completely different domain like geography, again, with the level of cognition, nuance, critical thinking, gray area assessment that a human is capable of doing. But I think still I'm not at the level of academia to make prognostications on when, if, but certainly an area of very interesting and hot philosophical debate.
All right, thanks for that. I wanted to also give an opportunity to Robert to share a little bit about his experience about AI. And before we go into the actual practical uses, I wanted to know from you, Robert, what kind of AI? I know you're an early adopter most of the time of anything. I've known you for a few years. You've been an early adopter of sustainable investing. So which ones are the tools that Austin mentioned are you familiar with, and which ones have you maybe tested?
I mean, thank you, Austin, for a good presentation. I mean, you depict the map of everyone, a map that everyone should understand, so to say, when we talk about AI. But I mean, from a financial perspective, we have used, of course, data science. I mean, statistical prognosis is forever. I mean, the whole quant model era and indexing and all of that, it's kind of a statistical model behind. So the data sets have been used for a while. So we're quite used to that. And I am an early adopter when it comes to AI. I was using AI before and searching for AI type of services before even ChatGPT, and I've been a frequent user of all the kind of tools that have been available. Because it's interesting to understand the development and it's interesting to understand the journey that it takes. But I would say everything that you have on your slide, Austin, I would be pretty familiar with, except the AGI stuff, which is partially kind of the reasoning models development and the next step that is ongoing at the moment with the different parties that develop these services. So, but everything else, I would say we're pretty familiar with here.
All right, so let's go now into the types of issues and the types of challenges that you might encounter when it comes to sustainable investing, more in particular, and the complexity has been increasing. I was wondering, Austin, if you could walk us through this complexity and tell us how, from your point of view, AI can help solve or at least make this complexity more or less difficult for sustainable investors.
Absolutely, more than happy to, and please everyone keep in mind that these complexity vectors are by no means comprehensive. I'm sure that all of us in this virtual room could come up with many more. I'm sure Robert, in fact, has many more himself. So just know that this is an indicative list, not an exhaustive one. I do want to break down these four buckets, however. So data challenges, standards and definitions, resource constraints, evolving needs. These are some of the areas that at Clarity AI in my day-to-day, I'm interacting with clients and we're trying to solve against these needs. So these are some of the most prescient needs that we see on the market today. Starting with data challenges, there's an interesting paradox actually, because on one hand, there's an overwhelming volume of information. We've got thousands of data points, disclosures, reports, but again, paradoxically, there are also some very significant gaps. Companies, for example, may not disclose scope 3 emissions. Private firms may say nothing at all. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in just a moment. And even when the data exists, it often lacks consistency and comparability. So two firms can report the very same metric in different ways. How can AI help? Well, to solve the data overload issue, so the sheer amount of tangled data sets that many investors are having to confront, Gen AI can help find patterns amidst a very rich and again perhaps tangled data set, which provides analysts with interesting signals, insights for further inquiry. Again, if we think about what Gen AI is best at, one of its key strengths is really pattern recognition at this stage, and in some ways it is better than humans at that task of pattern recognition, again at scale amidst a huge corpus of data. Also, machine learning estimation models can help fill the gaps, getting back to the gaps in disclosure issue in corporate disclosure, which is particularly important for private assets, which, of course, very often you're not getting any sort of public disclosure from private assets. So we also have ML-based models, not only providing some of those estimations, but also providing reliability models. So when we combine these ML reliability models, we can help ensure, along with human subject matter experts, that investors are actually engaging with meaningful, accurate data, because of course data accuracy is a primary concern in the sustainable investing space. Then you have the issue of standards and definitions. We all know that there's not a single global definition of what sustainability means, and the variations firm to firm, use case to use case, are enormous. So the one-size-fits-all approach offered from many sustainability providers just doesn't pass muster. I think here agentic AI plays a very important role in its ability to empower firms, analysts, investors to import their own views, their own mandates, their own preferences to create reports and avenues of analysis that are actually relevant to a team's specific sustainability definitions, rather than the default positions of the data analyst team. And then there's also some very basic data science that can help as well here when we talk about the ability to customize methodologies, scoring engines, and so on. Moving on to the third bucket, resource constraints. We know that sustainability teams are often small and among the mightiest at investment firms, but expectations are growing. And increasingly, sustainability teams are being asked to do more with the same amount of resources, or in fact, more with less. And the operational burden of collecting, cleaning, and reconciling data is obviously enormous. I've already brought up a few of AI's contribution vectors here, like analyst assistant, Gen AI agents to sort through the noise and deliver insight and automatic report generation to reduce compliance burdens. But we should also note AI's ability to expedite and scale data collection and validation processes. Finally, and then I'll be excited to turn it over to Robert. There's the question of evolving needs, right? Investors increasingly want visibility into private assets where reliable data is either hard to come by or entirely non-existent. They're also pushing for more forward-looking insights, so not just where a company stands today or where it stood yesterday, but rather what the future risks and opportunities associated with that company look like. So machine learning models, again, can help fill the data gaps in the alternative space. We've discussed that, while advanced models can support scenario analysis, giving us a better grasp on future probabilities and outcomes. And we're even seeing some clients use our data in correlation models to understand how ESG signals can help signal fundamental concerns, like in the insurance realm, loss ratios, claims frequencies, and so on. With that, I'll take a well-needed breath and pass it back.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this great summary. And now I'm going to turn to you, Robert, and see how AI has been helpful to you in some concrete examples.
No, I mean, once again, I mean, if you bring back the slide so that I can see it, so that I can talk about the same topic, so that you kind of get a continuity, you can always leave that there. I mean, if you talk about data challenges, that was the first realization we had. Well, actually, we knew this already because even at Storebrand, we were constantly struggling to finding good data sets on companies to verify sustainable revenues, green revenues back then we were calling it, and trying to understand what is the actual impact of a certain company, and there's a lot of gaps there and a lot of misinterpretation of what is relevant and what is not. So the first thing we did when we were working at SEB is basically break apart all data sets that were available to us back then. This was 5 years ago, and kind of reconstructed ourselves, of what was useful and what was not useful, so that we got the same type of data sets for every type of sector that we wanted to watch, or every type of company. So that I completely agree with. Sometimes the data sets are also stale, which is kind of also an issue, because many providers out there do not update it, and this is kind of the advantages of generative AI powered insight, is that you can update those data sets much more frequently, and they don't become stale. So the AI component we introduced into our review and scoring models was AI generated, just to understand what is reported and how can we adapt to today's world or view of a company. So the standards and the definition that you talked about, Austin, I mean, yes, there is no such thing as sustainable investment, clear definition, and it's always an interpretation, and people at times over exaggerate the whole component or under exaggerate, depending on which view you have on the world. But it's a component of the total performance of a company. It's not just something that you can identify easily because you have AI or because you have statistical models. Because one thing that is still missing is the core understanding what is sustainability from a both portfolio manager's perspective, but also from a practitioner's perspective. So the key component here is like, we can use as much AI as we want, and we can generate as much data as we want. If you don't understand the actual topic and what type of consequences that would have, it doesn't matter how many standards or definitions you have, you will probably not get to the result, and you won't connect the dots the right way. And that's where the resource and constraints comes in. I mean, we need to train ourselves of understanding, and this is kind of maybe a personal thing, that you need to read, you need to understand the topic, you need to connect the dots A to Z to actually meaningfully understand what is the value of a company's product or service or whatever that you find kind of attractive in an investment. And AI will help you definitely compound information and definitely give you more information that you have ever had before. But then you need to also connect the dots once again, and with resource constraints in many financial institutions, you don't have enough resources to actually especially smaller institutions, don't have the resources to take that time. So I think, you know, Austin has some great points in regards to the power of AI. But one thing that is always missing from the discussion is the actual understanding of the topic of sustainability and how you relate it to the performance of a company. Because, you know, signals can be false, signals can be made up, signals might be a consequence of something else that doesn't have actually anything to do with sustainability or anything with lack of sustainability. It's just a consequence of something that happens in the world. So all of these things you need to connect, and to me, AI has helped immensely to map this three-dimensional picture of a company. But for many, I think it's going to be even more confusing because the topic is very abstract as itself. Sorry, I'm going to stop there.
All right. Well, we could listen to you the whole day, of course. But I was going to ask Austin, do you have any reflections on Robert's experience?
Yeah, I mean, I completely empathize with Robert's point there. I'm totally aligned. So I think there is a serious risk that this is not just specific to the realm of sustainability. This is something that goes for any industry that's being touched by AI or sold AI. AI is not a panacea, right? It is not going to solve all of your problems, and we in fact have interacted with some parties who genuinely believe that. They believe that because we have AI in our name, we can create data out of nowhere. We can build methodologies that can predict the future with 100% accuracy. It's just not the case. And I think Robert brings up a really excellent and fundamental point that is so often missed here. AI has its strengths and weaknesses, right? We've covered that. One of its weaknesses is dealing with nuance, is dealing with fundamental definitions, right? If you're asking ChatGPT or Clarity AI's specialized sustainability assistant, it's specialized in sustainability, but it still cannot define sustainability for you. So I think it's important to keep in mind that when you're asking yourself questions about, hey, how do we think about the defense sector? That's a question that is still very much for humans and may be so for the foreseeable future. If you're trying to understand complex trade-offs in the data or complex trade-offs in one company or another, still a question for humans. Again, AI can sort of help you iterate on some of those concerns, but it will be iterative. It will be an interaction. It's not something that you can hand over to an agent and just say, figure it out. That outcome is, I think, going to be suboptimal. You know, also talking about engaging with companies, engaging with clients, identifying emerging issues, framing narratives. These are all things that, yes, AI can make a contribution. It can perhaps liberate you from the low value tasks that prevent you from engaging with your full energy and spirit in those human-led tasks, but it will not take them over. And that is very much our approach to AI at Clarity AI. We are not interested in replacing analysts, replacing investment teams, replacing engagement teams, because the fact is the technology is not even there. But we think that it's much more powerful to empower those teams to liberate themselves again from those low value tasks and take advantage of their comparative advantages, right? To spend their time on the high value tasks rather than the low value data collection tasks. You know, I'm looking through the sustainability reports of 1,000 companies and I've got a team that's all paid 100 grand to do other things. They're spending their time on this. That's the sort of issue that we want to solve. But there's so much room for humans that cannot be taken over by AI at this point. And it's really important to keep that in mind. AI is not a panacea. It is a tool.
Can I just add to that? I mean, I completely agree. And AI can be used as a productivity tool to enhance your, view on things. But once again, going back to the point, and thank you for acknowledging the point, but it's about knowing what you want as an organization, knowing which course you need to take, knowing the subject, like defense is very difficult, humanitarian, philosophical question that you need to first land as an organization before you can take AI into helping you achieve what you want to do. So that's a excellent point. And this is how people should be using AI at the moment, because we are not at an AGI level where AI can think for us or can help us, but it can become a so-called alpha for your organization by increasing productivity and kind of bringing out what is important for you and your strategy for that matter.
All right, so that's a good time to move on then to our next point, which is to look into some of these issues a little bit more specifically. And so you have mapped them out for us, Austin. Do you want to walk us through these 3 different categories of potential drawbacks for using AI?
Happy to, yes. So we've obviously underscored the point that it's very important to be honest about the concerns and limitations that come with applying AI to any use case. Of course, the sustainability use case and all of the underlying use cases definitely falling into the category. The first and probably the most talked about is the risk of hallucination and errors. I think everyone, even with the lightest sense of generative AI and LLMs, is aware of the issue of hallucinations. We've discussed that if we think back to the first slide, talking about the French gamblers, LLMs are essentially probability engines. They're predicting the next word based upon patterns in data. That means that sometimes they'll generate something that sounds very convincing, but is not actually true. And we've all been there with very basic questions like, can you please write me a short paragraph containing no more than 500 words. You go through, you count the words, and there's 499. And no matter how hard you try to convince ChatGPT, this was true, by the way, in ChatGPT 4, less so in ChatGPT 5, no matter how hard you try to convince the model, it maintains the belief that, no, that's 500 words. That's problematic. In the sustainability context, that could obviously mean citing the wrong emissions number. It could mean making up a reference. And this is very often what we see with general purpose as opposed to special purpose LLM tools, again, like ChatGPT, when applied to the nuanced realms of sustainability. So when you apply that general purpose tool to a sustainability use case, it will hallucinate quite a bit. It will leave things out because its corpus is not specialized. That is, the information that it has been trained on, that it is leveraging to generate those answers, is not specialized for that specific use case. Traditional machine learning models, on the other hand, which are used for estimations or forecasts, don't hallucinate as such. They are mapping features to outputs. So here they can still produce implausible outputs, but we wouldn't term them a hallucination because they're not confident in those implausible outputs. Here, those implausible outputs would be based upon poor training data, poor validation. Either way, those sorts of problems can be addressed via mechanisms like reinforcement learning with human feedback, connecting models to our own specialized verified data corpus rather than general web text. This is something that we do at Clarity AI, and also making sure that we're keeping humans in the loop for validation. So for example, just so that we have a concrete understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about humans in the loop, human subject matter experts at Clarity AI review estimation outputs, so the outputs of our estimation models, against holdout data sets. So that's data that has already been validated. We know the company has reported a valid figure to ensure that the estimation model is in fact an accurate one before it goes to deployment. In the case of our NLP systems, we also have human subject matter experts that review all high and very high severity controversy classifications classifications and then provide feedback to the model for constant improvement and fine tuning. So those sorts of mechanisms are very important. You need to have humans in the loop. You need to have human reinforcement to improve the models iteratively. The second concern is around transparency and explainability. Investors and regulators, again, as everyone in this virtual room knows, can't accept a black box answer. They need to know the why behind a conclusion. That's why we personally lean on explainable AI techniques that can show which inputs or drivers led to an estimated value. So for example, we can see how a company's sector classification, its business lines, its location, its employee headcount influence an estimate for, say, scope 3 emissions. So we can actually trace back and see how we got there, or how the model got there, that is. Moreover, we ensure that our GenAI analyst assistant outputs come with citations, links, so that clients can always trace results back to their source. The third concern is data quality and provenance. Put simply, this is GIGO. This is garbage in, garbage out. If underlying data is inconsistent, or if it's of a low quality, AI has a very, very bad habit of amplifying those weaknesses. And this is actually where we get to a philosophical question with the general purpose LLMs like those produced by OpenAI, of what happens when we run out of high quality data to train the models on, which is a more existential question, but one that I want to plant the seeds for, as it is an interesting one. To avoid this problem at Clarity AI, we put rigorous data collection and validation pipelines in place. They're replete with human-in-the-loop systems. We also cross-reference multiple sources when multiple sources are available. We track provenance, and this all means that we can show the lineage of a data point from source to model output. So the critical message here is that there are robust mechanisms to mitigate AI risks. I think with the right safeguards, so specialized data, human oversight, explainability layers, validation checks, AI can in fact be used responsibly and effectively to support investors and other use cases, rather than introduce more uncertainty. But again, you need to be very sure that the tools you are leveraging do in fact have humans behind them to validate the outputs. That human in the loop mechanism, if that's the one takeaway that we have from this slide, I hope that's it. Because that is an absolutely critical component, is to have humans behind the wheel in some regard, making sure that all the gauges line up.
All right. Well, that's a great tour of these types of issues. And I was going to ask Robert now to tell us, in his experience, what are the type of issues that you have encountered the most, and what you think is still outstanding, and what are the little hacks you found along the way?
Yeah, I mean, Austin once again presents the whole picture of challenges. I can just add, I mean, hallucination, I think it's becoming less and less frequent. I think the quality in most of these models has increased. And especially if you feed it with data sets that you have available to you that are uniquely produced, or that are proprietary, and you have an AI model within your organization that you can use. And I'm not necessarily talking about Copilot, but more advanced tools, so to say, so that you can find the core nuances of that information. Then the hallucination becomes less and less. But it has been a problem from that perspective. When it comes to the conversations that you have with an AI tool, is also something that you need to understand, that the AI model is trying to please you. That's the first understanding that you need to kind of understand, because the whole learning session has been produced through human input and human data, and considering the society we live in, it's quite a biased data sets that they are learning. So when you ask a question to an AI model, in a nice way, it wants to please you like a human would. So you kind of need to be very careful on how you prompt so that you get the answers that you want, not just the flattering stuff or the actual parts that are positive and forget about the negative. So always be critical when you're prompting, because that's something that is very important. The black box site, I think, a lot of these standard producers of ESG data have had that critique on them, that it's a black box. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you actually go back and look at the data in behind, you can see where they are getting it from. So it's not that it's, you just need to make the effort to actually understand the data behind. So we need to stop talking about the black box, because somewhere along the lines, AI is also black box, because the core LLM model that you guys run at Clarity is also proprietary, that you don't allow people into seeing. So there's a black box kind of, but with AI, you kind of see the steps, the calculation, which is easier to follow than needing to go back and on these standard ESG scores and understanding what different things stand for. So it's much more easy for users to understand. And the last part that we haven't spoken about it, and I think it's a very big challenge at the moment, is the transparency and the data availability, because we live in a world where transparency is becoming less evident. And especially when we have all these omnibuys coming from the European Union and on the Western side, we do have a movement that is restricting these type of data sets that are necessary to make sound decisions from sustainability perspective. So with less data, the AI model will become less effective as well if we don't get that data from NGOs or other parts. So it's important to understand that the CSRD or CSDDD or any type of regulation that comes from the US that increases transparency helps AI models and helps to digitalize our societies to create more knowledge and more understanding about the risks and opportunities out there. So if we get less of that, which we are obviously seeming to get, we will have a challenge from an AI perspective as well. So that's something we shouldn't forget, that data is necessary for us to take the next step into understanding the risks that our society faces.
All right, that's a great compliment to Austin's mapping. And I just want to remind everyone that there is an option to ask questions. Actually, someone managed to ask a question in the chat, so I'm very grateful for that. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question straight away. So it's Philip Mitchell who's asking, it feels like AI is getting better at spotting red flags in corporate financial data / reporting. Have you found a use case for AI spotting red flags in sustainable reporting?
Should I start? Philip is onto something here, and thank you for the question for that. But I can give you two general examples without pointing any companies. If you go to any type of clothing retail kind of brand that claims a lot of positive sustainability data and publishes around how much they do, and then you use AI to scrap local newspapers or compound information of what is written locally in regards to their local presence and how they meet society there. It suddenly becomes evident that the whole story is not true, and what is proclaimed in sustainability reporting is always a kind of a nuanced version of what is happening on ground. The second part is all the standardization that has happened when it comes to, for instance, Paris line benchmarks or Paris line components and sectors that are included into that. With AI, you can easily understand that a lot of the companies or sectors that are included in this Paris line tools are actually not really that sustainable that you might think. with the AI, you can actually compound all that information and directly point out that this is not going the way that it was supposed to be. So when we're doing that research ourselves, we're kind of like, okay, we will use AI to understand the data science and kind of predict that. And we realized that is not actually helping the world in an impactful way, the way we wanted to. So you could use AI definitely, from my perspective and my experience, to flag.
Do you have anything to add, Austin?
Yeah, it was me furiously writing. I think Robert brings up an excellent point. Certainly, we use AI and specifically natural language processing to check some corporate claims against what's actually happening via news articles, right? So we're scanning hundreds of thousands of articles on a daily basis from around the world to understand where companies are embroiled in controversial incidents and categorize those incidents, understand severity and so on. That's a very good sense check against what companies are saying, because obviously they have usually in most democratic systems very little control over what's reported on them, what's written about them. One of the other key ways that I mean, the basis of our reliability models is really about this. It's about ensuring that we aren't taking what's reported in a sustainable possible. Right? Those are not tablets. They are totally fallible documents, and we have many examples of companies making good faith errors. I mean, I'm sure in some cases someone's fudging something, but in most cases that we've experienced, this has been a case of someone dropping a zero, adding a zero, right, decimal in the wrong place, what have you. So what we have on our side are those reliability models, which basically for each quantitative data point that we extract from those sustainability reports or annual integrated reports, we subject each of those quant data points to a robust validation check, which consists of the model based upon everything else that we know about a company. So that could be employee headcount, where it's located, its energy mix, its industry, its business line breakdown. I mean, the list goes on and on. There are many potential attributes that we look at: revenue, market cap, so on and so forth. Based on all of those attributes, the model generates its best estimate of what we would reasonably expect a company to report for, say, Scope 3 emissions. Now, if the reported value is anomalous against that guess, then we bring in a subject matter expert to do a deep dive and understand, is there a mistake in the report or is there a mistake in the model? Both are totally valuable outcomes. More often than not, it's a mistake in the report at this point, because we've been doing this for many years now. So that is very much a central use case for ensuring reliable data at Clarity AI. And it's a great question. I'll echo Robert in thanking, I believe it was Philip, for it.
All right, and now it's time. We have 10 minutes left of our time, and I really want to dedicate this time to looking towards the future and looking to what the next frontier is, and using AI for portfolio management, and most specifically sustainable portfolio management, which all portfolio management should be ultimately. Do you want to get us started, Austin?
Sure, I'll be brief, because I'm very curious about Robert's thoughts here. Again, as we look to the objective of AI, we always need to think, what's your objective, as Robert said, before just throwing something into ChatGPT. What are you trying to get out of this? What's your purpose in using this tool? No one picks up a hammer and then figures out what to do with it. You pick up a hammer because you have a purpose in mind. So our purpose, again, is to liberate humans. That sounds very mighty, but liberate human analysts, investors, and so on from the low value tasks associated with things like data collection, data validation, data reliability tests. The low value task of, okay, I have a data set, I need to find signals or find patterns. I need to understand who the worst performer in my portfolio is, against Pi 3, SFDR Pi 3. Those are the sorts of low value analysis tasks that we're trying to free people up from in the portfolio management space. Additionally, we are also developing GenAI, but always updated or always integrated with the most updated data available. So there's the benefit of, instead of relying on an analyst's report, so from a data provider that takes some time to update, right? They're going to miss some controversies that come in before they're able to get that next update out. We're updating on a continuous basis, so those reports are constantly fresh, talking about the importance of fresh data in this case. Those are some of the key ways that we're trying to address that use case. But again, we are very, very much cognizant, and in fact, we are embracing the reality that this is sustainable investing, portfolio management. These are going to continue to be human-led endeavors, right? So we are merely providing the tools around reporting, around data unification, pattern search, initial insight generation to enable the very much critical humans, I'm happy to say, selfishly, to engage in those higher value tasks. So that's how we see it.
Robert, what do you expect your near future to be? Like, let's say 6 months from now. How do you think AI will impact your work there? And perhaps as a second part of the question, how do you see AI impacting your life a little bit later, maybe 2-3 years from now?
Short term, we are using AI in our daily work at the moment. We are compounding information that is available to us through these tools that our employer makes available to us. So you kind of use that as a productivity tool at the moment already. So anytime you get a 500-page report about battery technology or about any type of sustainable revenues, you don't always have the time to go through in detail the next version. So you kind of take the knowledge you already have and you compound it into small briefs that you can actually and tangibly go through. So that's a productivity. That's the first thing from a portfolio management perspective, that you get that tool. Finding the structure, finding and triaging different types of information into a map that you can navigate when it comes to different companies. So you can detect or at least it give you hints around sustainable revenues in a company that you never thought of would have been involved in a certain supply chain or production chain or any type of value creating or impactful stream. So that's kind of how I see the next 6 months going forward. Now, it still hasn't come to a place where you can actually translate that into some sort of valuation multiple deteriorating or increasing factor, because unfortunately, as I said in the beginning, it's so many factors that affect the sustainability insight is that you can't really connect that at the moment towards that, but you can definitely make projections and scenario analysis in regards to risks, in regards to opportunities, in regards to supply chains, in regards to 3 or 4 dimensional company. And that's kind of where I see AI going forward, is that anytime I open up my computer in 3 years from now, I will get a 4-dimensional view of a company based on every information available out there, and I can make a better decision on that. But that's kind of how I see it. But the system at the moment doesn't kind of translate it into actual value creation in many cases. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. It's part of the total value creation. It will impact within 5 to 10 years or 10 to 15 years, depending on the cycle of the company, but it kind of doesn't have immediately. So for me, it's definitely productivity, better assessment, better view of a company, and I input some parts of it in my valuation models because I think it's relevant from a risk perspective, or it's an opportunity perspective, or I see something that people don't see from a a sustainable revenue perspective relative to others, and all of those factors that might lead that my company that I choose will be better in the future. So that's kind of time I look at something, and we have to kind of wonder.
I'm wondering especially about scenario analysis. So either Austin or Robert, do you have any examples where AI can be used in running different scenario analysis and then perhaps summarizing the likelihood, or enhancing the type of scenario analysis we've been doing typically with just a sort of force of our human brains?
I'm happy to start. I think this is actually this is complicated, right? AI has what's called a jagged frontier. So if we think about the things that it's good at, there's sometimes things that seem too complex for AI to do that surprisingly it can do. And then there's things that seem so simple that it shouldn't be a problem for AI to do that it can't do. So it's a totally jagged frontier. So sometimes you get these surprises along the way where you go, wow, I'm either positively or negatively surprised about the output here. We have seen some positive surprises about our own LLM's ability to make some very nuanced assessments of nature dependencies on the basis of encore materiality, and the sorts of assessments that companies provide details on in their reports, comparing that against the asset level data that we have in our system. It can come up with some very interesting assessments that, of course, you need to take a look at. You can't take them as a given, but very often that's an interesting place for further inquiry. We also, of course, have scenario analysis models that we've built with our partner Ortec for specifically climate scenario. I think that that's a very, very specialized model. I think that's probably where a lot of that scenario analysis is going to go, to very special purpose models rather than general purpose. But again, it can be surprising where AI can take you in some that surprise you. Just be sure to check the output, right? Don't take it as a given.
All right. Robert, did you have any experience with scenario analysis, or is that on your wish list?
No. I mean, you constantly do this mini scenario analysis in regards to company's trajectory, in regards to company's development, and you always test the AI, and it gives you back a pretty accurate kind of thought process if you prompt it properly. So I kind of like the scenario thinking when it comes to AI. I mean, all scenario thinking is somewhere along the lines based on data science. That's a math, so it's AI already. So you kind of, oh sorry, I shouldn't call it AI, but it's data science. But definitely you make conclusions on predictions in the future that you don't know nothing about, and based on comments or convictions that you have today. So, but it's always good to have this. I wouldn't say person, but an agent that will give you a nuanced version of.
Right. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately. As I said earlier, we could listen to this topic the whole day. At least I could. But we have to move on with our lives. Unfortunately, we didn't get to answer all the questions in the chat, but we'll make sure to follow up by email. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Thank you, Austin, for your expertise, and Robert for sharing your real life cases and examples.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.